Carol Denise Spinks, who was a 13-year-old at the time, was sent by an older sister to buy groceries at a 7-Eleven. It was located a half-mile away from her home just across the border in Maryland. As she headed home from the store, she was kidnapped. Her body was later found 6 days after around 2:46 p.m. behind St. Elizabeth's Hospital in an embankment near the I-295 northbound lanes. Darlenia Denise Johnson, a 16-year-old, was kidnapped on July 8, 1971. As she walked through Congress Heights on her way to her summer job at Oxon Hill Recreation Center. A witness reported having seen her in an old black car, driven by an African-American male, shortly after her abduction. Her body was found 11 days later, only 15 feet, 4.6 meters, from where Spinks had been found, evidence of strangulation, and she had no shoes on. Brenda Faye Crockett, 10-year-old Crockett, failed to return home on July 27, 1971, after having been sent to the store by her mother. Around 9:20 p.m. the home phone rang and it was answered by her 7-year-old sister, who had waited at home while her family searched the neighborhood. Crockett was on the other line, crying. "A white man picked me up, and I'm heading home in a cab," Crockett told her sister, adding that she believed she was in Virginia before abruptly saying, "Bye," and hanging up. Later the phone rang again, but this time her stepfather of Crockett answered the phone. It was Crockett again. She repeated what she'd said in the last telephone call, adding, "Did my mother see me?" indicating she was alone in a house with a white male. Her stepfather asked her to have the man come to the phone. Heavy footsteps were heard in the background and Crockett said, "I'll see you," and hung up. Authorities quickly concluded that Crockett likely called her home at the behest of the killer, who fed her inaccurate information in order to buy the necessary time to perpetrate the crime, and to hamper the investigation. About 5:50 a.m. the next day, a hitchhiker found Crockett's shoeless body on U.S. Route 50, near the Baltimore-Washington Parkway in Prince George's County, Maryland. She had been raped and strangled. A scarf was knotted around her neck. On October 1, 1971, 12-year-old Nina Moshia Yates was walking home around 7 p.m. from a Safeway store, when she was abducted, raped, and strangled. Her body was found within 3 hours of her kidnapping, just off the shoulder of Pennsylvania Avenue in Prince George's County, Maryland. As with the other cases, her shoes were missing and unidentified green fibers would also be found on her clothing. One witness apparently saw her getting into a blue Volkswagen. It was investigated, but it led to nowhere. On November 15, 1971, after having dinner plans with a high school classmate, 18-year-old Brenda Denise Woodard, from Baltimore boarded a city bus around 11:30 p.m. to return to her Maryland Avenue home. About 6 hours later, a police officer discovered her body, which had been stabbed multiple times and strangled, in a grassy area near Prince George's County Hospital, along an access ramp to Route 202 from the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. Unlike the other victims, she was still wearing her shoes, and a coat had been placed over her chest. In one of her pockets contained a note from the killer. Almost a year later, on September 5, 1972, the Phantom's final victim was found. 17-year-old Ballou High School senior, Diane Denise Williams, cooked dinner for her family and then visited her boyfriend's house. She was last seen getting on a bus at 11:20 p.m. near his house. A few hours later, her strangled body was discovered dumped alongside I-295, just south of the district line. Just like other victims, her shoes were missing, but no signs of sexual assault were found, although traces of semen, assumed from the boyfriend, were found. The Green Vega rapists were considered suspects due to the fact that they were collectively responsible for numerous Washington, D.C. and surrounding Maryland vicinity rapes and abductions that occurred near the Washington Beltway. The members were individually interviewed by MPDC homicide detectives Fickling, Irving, and Richardson, at Lawton Prison in Virginia, where the gang members were serving sentences. In an interview, one of the gang members implicated another gang member, who he admitted told him that he was involved and gave him information as to one of the Beltway homicides. This particular inmate was also serving a sentence at Lawton Prison for the Green Vega convictions. The inmate being interviewed stipulated that he would give more information if he could remain unidentified. Police agreed. He identified the man, giving the date and location of the crime, and signature detail which was not provided to the public, but was known only to the perpetrator and to detectives. That signature information was correct. The inmate who provided the information stated that he was not involved in the homicide, and gave an alibi which was found to be verifiable. This information was leaked to the press through an upcoming government candidate, which caused the witness to recant his statement. Two ex-cops, Edward Leonard Selman and Tommy Bernard Simmons, were arrested for the murder of Angela Denise Barnes, who was 14. At one point thought to be a victim of the serial killings. Police later determined that Barnes was not a victim of the Freeway Phantom and resumed their investigation on the murders. Serial killer Robert Askins was also a suspect at one point, but he denied being involved until the day he died, at the Federal Correctional Institution in Cumberland, Maryland on April 30, 2010. These murders have still been considered unsolved for over the last 50 years. Who do you think the Freeway Phantom is?